This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. This week marks the one-year anniversary of the attack on a Sikh temple in Oak Creek, Wisconsin that left 6 people dead and 5 wounded. People of all faiths joined the Sikh community for vigils to remember those who died August 5, 2012, when neo-Nazi gunman Wade Michael Page opened fire on worshippers in the temple. The Oak Creek tragedy brought national attention to the thread of hate and discrimination that's become routine for millions of Sikh, Muslim, Hindu, and Arab Americans in the last decade. According to reports, hate crimes against these communities are now at their highest since 2001, and the number of hate groups has more than doubled since 2000. Last Friday, ahead of the anniversary, Attorney General Eric Holder announced the Justice Department will begin collecting data on hate crimes committed against Sikhs, along with other religious groups. The Sikh community has long sought such inclusion. This is Jasjit Singh of the Sikh American Legal Defense Fund.
In the year after Oak Creek, we've made some progress with the government, and in 1 year to get the FBI to agree to start tracking hate crimes against Sikhs, that's progress in the context of 1 year later. We know that the government has challenges in moving quickly, especially in this environment, but for them to recognize the need and move on it, that should be absolutely acknowledged, and we applaud that effort. At the same time, it's not exactly a victory in the sense that we're simply requesting that we be recognized when we are facing these horrific challenges. And so it gives you a sense for how much work really there is to be done in a broader scope.
On the day after the anniversary of the shooting, 5 golden domes were added to the Oak Creek Sikh temple, something the late temple president, who was killed in last year's massacre, had wanted. Well, to talk more about the implications of this tragedy 1 year later, we go to Milwaukee, where we're joined by 2 guests whose unlikely alliance was born out of this tragedy. Pardeep Kalika is the son of slain temple president Sudvant Kalika. He's a founder of Serve to Unite. Arnold Michaelis is also with us, former white supremacist, author of My Life After Hate. He's an educator with Pardeep in Serve to Unite. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Pardeep, I'd like to begin with you, and it is a year later. My condolences on the death of your father and the others in your community. Talk about what happened that day.
Good morning, Amy. Thank you. That day, August 5th, I guess sort of marked our community being victimized by a hate crime committed by a white supremacist. That I think he didn't think that we represented what America was about, and basically came into the temple that day and shot 6 people dead, one including my father, and others injured, and one still critically in a vegetative state. This past weekend, I'm glad that you talked about this past weekend. It was a healing process. It's been a healing process throughout the year, but this past weekend especially, with marking a 1 year vigil, and obviously with the domes going up, one of the wishes that my dad really wanted is for the Gurdwara to look like a Gurdwara.
Pardeep, can you talk about the guest you're sitting next to right now? Can you talk about how the 2 of you met after this killing last year?
Sure. Last year, right after August, there was a lot of media, and we were working with a lot of other nonprofits around the area. As I was working with some nonprofits, as far as the gun debate that was festering at the time, I was walking out of a meeting, and one of the people asked me, have you contacted Arnold Michaelis yet? And I had been meaning to contact Arnold because I knew the work that he was doing in the community. And fortunately, we both were part of another network called Against Violent Extremism, which is made up of former violent extremists and survivors who link together and share their stories of forgiveness and compassion for a broader message of forgiveness and compassion. And I contacted the organizer of AVE, Ross Furnett, and he told me how to get in contact with Arnold, and we went back and forth via email and text, and eventually we finally talked one evening. The evening that we talked, I remember...
I wanted to bring Arno into this, Arno Michaelis, and ask about your background. You were a racist skinhead, a white supremacist. Talk about how you started there and ended up working together against violence and hate with Pardeep.
I'd be happy to, Amy. Good morning. Thanks for having us on. I got involved in white power skinhead groups really just as a angry, bored, unchallenged teenager. I don't believe anyone really has an excuse to be violent, but I absolutely had no excuse. I came from a privileged background in Midwestern Wisconsin, born into the middle class. I really had everything going for me, but I came from an alcoholic household. There's a lot of emotional violence. My parents were pretty miserable, and that made me want to distance myself from them. And it also kind of got me lashing out at an early age. I was a bully on the school bus as early as kindergarten. In elementary school, I started getting in fights in the schoolyard. This kept escalating to breaking and entering and vandalism in middle school. By the time I was a teenager, I started drinking myself. I got into punk rock, which I still love, and I really appreciate the DIY attitude and question authority aspect of punk. But back then, to me, it was just about smashing things and hurting people and lashing out, and that's kind of who I was when I came across the idea of getting involved with white power skinheads. And I initially donned a swastika really for shock value because it was the most effective way to piss people off that I had come across by that time. And so I wasn't really a racist looking for other racists. I was just a bored, angry kid, like looking for something to make me feel worthwhile and a cause to kind of join up with. And I found very quickly that once I started radiating hate and violence out into the world around me, the world reflected it back. And as I was expressing my hostility and the hostility was being returned to me, it made me more hateful and violent. That ultimately led me through a 7-year involvement in hate groups. I got out in '94. The 2 milestone events in me leaving were becoming a single parent, and about a couple months after that, a second friend of mine was murdered in a street fight. And by that time, I had lost count of how many friends had been incarcerated, so it struck me that if I didn't change my ways, death or prison was very likely to take me from my daughter. Beyond those milestones, though, I truly believe that it was acts of kindness that I had been given to me by strangers and people that I was openly hostile to. There were times when black people, Jewish people, gay and lesbian people treated me as a human being, even though I refused to acknowledge their humanity. And while those acts of kindness didn't change me on the spot, they did plant seeds that kind of stuck with me and built on a growing sense that what I was doing was wrong. And I believe that if it wasn't...
You've said that you feel you were so heavily involved in the white power movement, also your music, that you may have influenced the shooter to kill.
Yeah, when August 5th happened, I was first and foremost heartbroken for Pardeep and his family and the families of the other victims. I thought, you know, what it would be like to have someone murder my father or my grandfather or my mother. And that human level was really what was most important to me. But the next thought was that I did a lot to contribute to the environment that created Wade Page. In many ways, he was exactly who I used to be. He was a white power skinhead. He was lead singer in white power bands. And I had done that years before he became active, and I was, you know, kind of instrumental in creating the environment that created him.
Pardeep, you were a police officer before becoming a teacher?
Yeah, I was a police officer for 4 years in the inner city, and but went on to becoming a teacher in that same inner city. Right now, that's what I do part-time. Something else that we do part-time is with Serve to Unite. We go out to schools and an outreach program to try to get students to engage in their environment and identify social issues that they have to deal with and try to find constructive ways of dealing with them. It's been a good run for the last 6 months, and we're planning to keep doing it and moving forward.
Arno, have you reached out to white supremacists?
I'm not a white supremacist intervener. When I started doing outreach in January 2010, I started speaking openly about my past and writing, and it was very important to me to address racism. But in the grand scheme of things, while they can be very dangerous and they are very destructive, as Pardeep can unfortunately attest to, in the grand scheme of things, white supremacist groups aren't. I don't think they should be the main concern. I'm more concerned with the cumulative effects of 500 years of white supremacy and the effect that it has on our inner cities. So I've been focusing my efforts on trying to help people who are struggling in socioeconomically depressed areas to realize the power that they have to change their lives and their environments. I think those are the people who are suffering the effects of racism on a broader scale, and so that's where I focus my work. Now, over the course of doing that and of sharing my story and of just being out there publicly, I have had a small but steady stream of people looking to me for guidance to leave the white power movement. I've had a few more people doing that than I have gotten hate mail from my old buddies.
And Pardeep, as the two of you go to schools and as you live in your community, what is the message that you're sending out now? How do you think we can reduce hate and violence in society as you honor now this first anniversary of what took place? You honor the memory of your father and the others killed and wounded.
Yeah, I mean, good question. That when we go out to schools and we talk to students, we want to engage them in a few different things. We want to engage them in the ideas of compassion and the ideas of kindness and the ideas of being immovable. And what that basically means is we want students to be self-confident, confident enough that they're not easily persuaded by somebody else or somebody else's beliefs about them. And we also want them to be social agents of change, basically, to take ownership of their surroundings and their environment, and sort of mold not only their school culture, but also their broader culture when they get outside.
I want to thank you both for being with us and ask, you're both wearing a T-shirt, one blue, one brown, and they have a hand on it. What does the hand represent?
The hand is essentially, it means we're interrupting the cycle of violence. We're very inspired by Amina Matthews and her Interrupters organization in Chicago. Beyond this interrupting the cycle of violence, the motivation for doing that is the essence of taking ownership of the violence in our society. That blood is on all of our hands, it's all of our problem, and we all need to be part of the solution. So the hand signifies our ability to affect that situation and our willingness to take ownership of it.
I want to thank you both
right here.
I want to thank you both for being with us. Arno Michaelis, author of My Life After Hate, and Pardeep Kalika, founder of Serve to Unite, working with Arno in that group. Pardeep's father was among those killed last year at the Sikh temple in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. They're speaking to us from